I thought we'd see what a real expert saw in today's testimony by the Attorney General. I watched most of it. Of course, I had some other responsibilities as well. But Mike Howell is a senior advisor for the Executive Branch Relations with Heritage and a former Department of Homeland Security Oversight Counsel. Mike, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
I had my favorite parts of the testimony of Bill Barr, but I'd like to know what you thought came out of this. Did anything really, truly new come out, or did Bill Barr just have to remind Jerry Nadler and the rest of the Democrats of the facts on the ground? I have to say it that way because it's like I was listening thinking, I've said all those numbers at least once, and I'm not Attorney General.
Right. I mean, there is nothing new in the way of facts. It's just congressional oversight has really been broken. It used to be useful. It used to be for like kind of systematic oversight of government programs, facts and figures. What it's turned into as Congress does, increasingly nothing in the way of legislating. It's just an opportunity for some of these rank and file members to have their temper tantrums on TV. And we saw a lot of that today. How about the, I reclaim my time, which is, as Jim Jordan says, just code for shut up. It was just every other word out of their mouths. It was a complete clown show. Meanwhile, you got cities in this country burning, and this is what the Democrats want to spend their time on.
I guess in some ways, Mike, I don't know if this is politic or not, or whether or not it's allowable because there are all the formal rules of Congress, and then there are sort of the unspoken rules that we never do it this way, we never do it that way. I was wishing that A.G. Barr had said to Jerry Nadler at the beginning of his at the end of his prepared statement, said, Chairman Nadler, it would be a great idea if right here, right now, you condemned the violence that's going on in American cities. We can both endorse free speech and advocating, petitioning our government for, redress of grievances. Certainly legitimate to do that for any American, black or not. But why don't we both condemn the violence right now? Because I would have loved to have seen that kind of challenge to somebody like Jerry Nadler. He could say, I'm not going to condemn the violence. Not a good answer. I am going to condemn the violence. Not going to make his party happy. But at least we get to see, because I don't hear the Democrats condemning the violence.
Oh, no, absolutely not. And as it relates to kind of the rules of these hearings, I mean, it's just Congress makes up its own rules and tries to enforce them on others. And they don't even play by their own rules. I mean, it's a crime for you to go in there to lie to Congress, but hell, they can lie as much as they want. I mean, look at Adam Schiff just still walking around without any accountability for all the lies he told and all the misinformation and just false narratives that these guys push out, every single hearing and day on cable news. They don't play by their own rules that they set for everyone else. And you're right, Bill Barr had an opportunity to turn the tables on him a couple times. I thought he did a great job with Rep. Raskin when basically Raskin was saying, hey, these churches, condemned what you did around it. And, Attorney General Barr responded, was that before or after we put out the fire? And so that was a powerful moment.
Well, and not only that, but think about this. The group that is supposedly the titular head of all of this is Black Lives Matter. And members of that group, high-ranking members of that group, are saying, hey, our movement's been hijacked. Well, no kidding, because Black Lives Matter on its website says we are pro-Marxist. What happens to most churches and religions under a Marxist government? And also we are against the nuclear family. Well, what black American says I'm against a family with a mom and a dad and a bunch of kids?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the leadership of the group, I think, is, very, very far out there. But I wouldn't give cover to everyone else participating in these kind of protests. They've adopted the core premises of these groups, of the leadership of the group. Whether it's the lie that America is a systemically racist country, or even using kind of the sloganeering that was proven false, like the hands up, don't shoot lie, which, even Obama's Justice Department told us never happened. And so I don't give everyone a pass and differentiate them from their leadership. I think it's on those marching under those slogans to show that they don't stand for all that stuff. If you and I went out and started, chanting MAGA, we'd be held to account for everything the president did. So I don't give anyone a pass who marches under the slogan of Black Lives Matter for being different than the Marxists, just core of that group.
Well, tell me this, Mike. You're more the expert on this. I'm a generalist. But if you engage in a criminal conspiracy, you commit crimes, you're part of the group, but, in other words, you don't have to be the guy with the gun in the face of this liquor store clerk in his face. You could be the lookout down the way. You could be the getaway driver. You could be the spotter. And you're still involved in a criminal enterprise. If you come to understand that when I go out to, in quotes, protest, I'm there to provide cover with several thousand other people so that a few hundred people can conduct criminal attacks on civilian law enforcement, federal law enforcement, on average citizens, on public property, on private property. If you're part of that criminal enterprise, aren't you just as liable criminally for engage in the same way that if a crowd of teenagers say, let's all flood into a store and one or two of us will shoplift and the rest of us will just be cover for the shoplifters, these flash mob kind of situations, you'd say, well, then you're all engaged in a criminal enterprise. Oh, no, I didn't steal anything. It was that guy. But you were part of the group and you knew what the group was doing. Isn't there a case to be made for that?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And weren't we just told that all the cops who were involved, in the George Floyd incident, whether they were Chauvin or the other cops watching, were held responsible for being a part of that group. So why doesn't that theory apply across the board? There's, what we call felony murder charges, where if you're, part of a group in the commission of a felony and someone gets murdered, everyone's held responsible. There's also a host of other, legal theories in which people and groups can be held responsible for the bad actions of a few. But moreover, there's a moral responsibility for all these people in these protests. Good-natured people do not go to where they know a riot will be to voice their peaceful protest concerns. That's just not how a moral citizen exercises their freedom of speech. If you know by the point that there's been 2 months of this violent rioting in Portland, that's not the place where peaceful protest is occurring. And so if you go there, and even if you don't throw the rocks or light the fires, you're part of an unlawful assembly, and your very presence there is making it hard for law enforcement to do their job. You, in addition to having a legal culpability, have a very, a strong moral culpability. And I'm frankly sick and tired of everyone in the cable news and the Democrats and the Hill saying that, these peaceful protesters are, just being sullied by the bad apples. To me, if you're part of a riot, it doesn't matter if you're the worst of it or, the only one not doing anything wrong. You're part of the problem.
Well, and in fact, Mike, even the folks over at Fox News, and I used to have a lot more to do with Fox News than I do now, but they ran a headline today saying Barr questioned about detaining protesters. Barr's DOJ has not detained any protesters. They have detained people who said they were protesters who are carrying out criminal acts, and they detained them for the criminal acts. And yet they've even got Fox News singing from the same sheet of music as the liberals, saying you're detaining people for free speech. No, there isn't a single person out there. There have been people arrested for assaulting a cop, resisting arrest, a number of other things. Nobody's been detained for simply protesting. That's Mike Howell from the Heritage Foundation. Mike, thanks so much. I appreciate the time.